Leif Erikson, the Viking who reached America before Columbus. The sea was silent. No birds, no land, only an endless horizon of steel-gray water stretching into the unknown. The year was around 1000 AD, 5 centuries before Christopher Columbus would sail west under the Spanish flag. A Viking ship was already cutting through the Atlantic winds. At its helm stood a tall Norseman with cold determination in his eyes. His name was Leif Erikson, and history almost forgot him. The son of exile. Leif was born around 970 AD, likely in Iceland, a harsh land carved by volcanoes and ice. His father was no ordinary man. He was Eric the Red, a fierce Viking outlawed from both Norway and Iceland for murder. Exile defined their bloodline. When Eric was banished from Iceland in 982 AD, he sailed west into the unknown and discovered a massive frozen island. To attract settlers, he named it something deceptively welcoming, Greenland. It was a bold lie, but it worked. By 985 AD, Eric had led fleets of settlers to colonize Greenland. Young Leif grew up in this brutal frontier, a land of glaciers, hunger, and isolation. Survival demanded courage. Weakness meant death. But Leif was different from his father. Where Eric was hot-tempered and impulsive, Leif was calm, observant, calculating, and destiny was already whispering his name. A storm and a new faith. In the late 990s, Leif traveled east to Norway. There he entered the court of King Olaf Tryggvason, a ruler determined to spread Christianity across the Viking world. Olaf saw potential in Leif. Under the influence of Olaf, Leif converted to Christianity around 999 AD. He was baptized and given a mission: bring the Christian faith back to Greenland. The son of a pagan warlord, now a messenger of Christ. The transformation was shocking, but Leif's most important journey had not yet begun. The rumor of a Western land. Some years earlier, around 986 AD, a trader named Bjarni Herjolfsson had been blown off course while sailing from Iceland to Greenland. Through heavy fog and storms, he glimpsed strange new lands to the west, forested shores unlike the icy cliffs of Greenland. He did not explore them. He turned back. But the story spread. Leif listened carefully. Forests meant timber, something Greenland desperately lacked. Timber meant survival, power, expansion. Around 999 or 1000 AD, Leif bought Bjarni's ship and he sailed west into the unknown. Imagine the risk. No maps, no certainty, only rumors carried by wind and memory. Leif and his crew sailed from Greenland into the vast Atlantic. Days turned to weeks. The ocean swallowed the horizon. Then, land. The first place they reached was rocky and barren. Leif named it Helluland, land of flat stones. Scholars believe this was likely Baffin Island. They did not stay. They sailed south. Soon they reached a forested coastline, thick woods, wildlife, rich resources. Leif named it Markland, forest land. Today, historians connect it to Labrador. But Leif pushed further south, until they arrived somewhere extraordinary. Vinland, the land of wine. The next land was different, milder climate,
wild grapes growing in the fields, salmon-filled rivers, fertile soil. Leif named it Vinland, land of wine. Most scholars believe this location corresponds to Meadows at the northern tip of Newfoundland, Canada. And this changes everything, because it means that around 1000 AD, nearly 500 years before Columbus, Vikings reached North America. Not as accidental drifters, but as explorers, as settlers, as pioneers. The first European settlement in America. At Vinland, Leif's crew built houses of timber and sod. They repaired ships, they gathered resources, they explored inland. For a brief moment in history, Europe and North America were connected. But they were not alone. The Norse sagas speak of encounters with indigenous peoples they called Skraelings. These were likely ancestors of the Beothuk or other Native American groups. At first, trade may have occurred, but tensions grew. The Norse were few, isolated, far from reinforcements, and the New World was not empty. It never was. Return to Greenland. After spending a winter in Vinland, Leif eventually returned to Greenland around 1001 AD. He brought back timber and stories of fertile lands. He also brought Christianity. His father, Eric the Red, refused to convert, but Leif's influence changed Greenland forever. He earned a new nickname, Leif the Lucky, not because of chance, but because he survived. Others follow and fail. Leif's brother Thorwald attempted further expeditions to Vinland around 1002 to 1004 AD. He was killed in a conflict with indigenous inhabitants, the first recorded European death in the Americas. Another attempt was made by Thorfinn Karlsefni, who led a larger colonization effort around 1004 AD. For 3 years they tried. They built houses, they traded, they fought, but they could not hold it. Distance, isolation, resistance, harsh winters. Vinland was abandoned, and over time, forgotten, erased by history. Why did the world forget Leif Erikson? Because the Viking presence in North America did not last. There was no empire, no permanent colony, no continuous contact. When Christopher Columbus sailed in 1492, Europe had no memory of Vinland. The sagas survived only in Icelandic manuscripts written centuries later, the saga of the Greenlanders and the saga of Eric the Red. For many years, scholars doubted them. Were they myths, legends, national pride? Then came the proof. The discovery that changed everything. In 1960, Norwegian explorer Helge Ingstad and archaeologist Anna Steen Ingstad discovered Norse ruins at Meadows. The site contained unmistakable Viking artifacts, iron nails, a smithy, Norse-style buildings. Radiocarbon dating placed them around 1000 AD. The sagas were true. Leif Erikson had truly reached North America. History had to be rewritten. The man behind the legend. Yet Leif himself remains mysterious. He likely died sometime between 1019 and 1025 AD in Greenland. Unlike later explorers, he left no journals, no self-written accounts, only echoes in sagas and soil. But his journey reshaped human history, because exploring is not about who arrives first, it is about who is remembered. And for centuries, memory favored Columbus. Only in modern times did Leif reclaim his place. In the United States, October 9th is celebrated as Leif Erikson Day, officially recognized in 1964. A quiet acknowledgement, a delayed honor. The real meaning of his voyage. Leif Erikson did not know he was making history. He only knew he was chasing a rumor of land beyond the horizon, and he found it 500 years before the world was ready to remember him. Final reflection. History often crowns the loudest name, but sometimes the first footsteps leave the deepest imprint. Around 1000 AD, a Viking stood on North American soil, not as a conqueror, not as a legend, but as a man willing to sail into darkness. His name was Leif Erikson.